All right, so last week we were looking at Ecclesiastes, probably the most confusing book in the entire Bible, where basically it tells you over and over and over again that life isn't worth it, it's depressing and meaningless. And then you die. However, the book is actually meant to be uplifting. In the last chapter, the book gets explained as itself being a cattle prod. The idea is that it is supposed to poke you and get you to try and live a life that has meaning, and that it explains throughout the whole book that if you take God out of any part of life, that part becomes meaningless. It becomes drudgery. It becomes depressing. But if you put God back into each and every part of your life, then it doesn't have to be. Then you can actually find joy in everything from the stuff that you think should be joyful to the stuff that you think should be depressing. God says, I can put joy in that stuff for you. So that was the book of Ecclesiastes. We looked at that last week. And so that was kind of the countering ideas, is without God, everything is meaningless and disappointing in this life. And with God, everything is meaningful and fulfilling in this life. But this was the very, very end. And it said, so basically, keep God in your life. But this was the big statement at the very, very end of the book. And it's actually prefaced by a statement that says, this is the whole point. So it literally just comes out and says it in the last two verses. So this is the whole point, in case you didn't want to read the whole book. Too long didn't read. Fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. So that was Ecclesiastes, and now we move on to the book that no one teaches to young people. Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon, also known as the Song of Songs. Does anybody know what this book is about? That's probably because no one teaches it to young people. This book is an epic love poem. It is called the Song of Songs because Solomon wrote about 1,005 different songs, and this was considered to be his greatest work. This was the most epic, the most amazing, the most lovely, the most endearing, the most enthralling, the most exciting of all the different things that he wrote. Yes? He was really good at writing. Yes, he wrote some stuff before he had 1,000 wives. He wrote some stuff while he was on his way to getting 1,000 wives. He wrote Ecclesiastes after he had 1,000 wives. So these aren't all in order. If you'll notice, BC numbers are backwards. He writes Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, which deal with love too, but he writes those after he has all 1,000 of his wives. Okay? Whereas he writes this book, Song of Solomon, it came from this slide, in 950-ish, could have been as early as 965, we're not really sure. We don't get a calendar of Solomon's life. All we know is that in the book he references how many queens he's married to and how many concubines he has, and it is nowhere near 1,000. So he is early on in his kingship when he writes this. Whereas these ones, he does actually mention the 1,000 in this, so we know he was towards the end of his kingship when he wrote that one. And Proverbs, we're just guessing he wrote towards the end based on the copies we have and how old they are. They don't fit with everything else, and he's writing to his son in the interest of that son taking over the kingdom, which wouldn't make sense at the early part of his reign. It would only make sense when he's old. So this book is when he's younger, and it's all about love. And he is actually one of the lead characters. He's one of the main characters. And so he'll talk about himself from the third person because of the format of the song. The song is probably closest to our modern-day opera. It is a song, but it's also a story. You could also call it a musical. So it's going to be sung by multiple characters. And so in most Bibles, if you open up the Song of Solomon, you'll find it actually has, almost like the script for a play, it has like so-and-so says, but it like in bold, separate from the verses, in between all the verses, so you can tell which verse is being said by who. And occasionally, you'll actually see it say, said by so-and-so to so-and-so. It'll actually tell you who they're talking to, because sometimes in the verses, it's not clear. Sometimes you're not really sure who they're talking to. What they've done to figure all this stuff out is look at the Hebrew words as they were originally written. And Hebrew is such a cool language. It'll actually tell you in the words written on the page if the speaker is plural or singular, which is something we don't usually care about too much. That's like saying I say or saying we say. You don't even have to write the word I or we in Hebrew. You can literally just change the way you write your words. And it implies it's a singular person saying this, or it's a group of people saying this. So because of this, and there only being 4 characters in the book, you can figure out who's talking all of the time. Because there's one singular woman who speaks, one singular man who speaks, one group of women who speak, and one group of men who speak. So if you can tell the gender of the speaker, and you can tell if it's a singular person or a plural, then you know exactly who's talking.
You think that was intentional?
I do think it's intentional, or else I think Solomon, being smart enough, would have just written so-and-so says. That, or he just likes the parallelism of having the one man who's in love, all the men who are not. The one woman who's in love, all the women who are not. It's a good counterpoint for the conversations that take place in the book. So inside this book is a lot of really flowery, poetic, not straight to the point type stuff. There are many, many times where someone is being described physically, their beauty is being described, their masculinity, their strength is being described in the book, but they don't use poetry like we use poetry. And so this is helpful to know. There are times in the book where they'll say stuff like the man will be talking to the woman and he says to the woman, "Your hair is like goats descending a mountain." But this is the problem. In our mind, when I said that, what were you thinking? But how were you thinking about it? Describe it to me. Bad hairdo, okay? Why did you get to bad hairdo? What brought you there? The word goat. Done. I'm done. Word goat and I'm done. It's a bad hairdo. What'd you get, Autumn? Long hair. Okay. Tell me how you got there. Okay, do you guys see what she did? She's not thinking about your head looks like it has goats on it. Do you guys see? You abstracted. You abstracted. You took the concept, you thought of what is the primary quality, now apply it to the hair. Not what do goats going down a mountain look like, therefore what does your hair look like? Okay, so many times in this book, if you ever get a chance to read through, I'll give you a few verses today. We'll actually listen to a few strangers reading this book, and they're kind of like given a quiz, almost a puzzle. What are you reading? They give them it printed on a page, not like they don't give them a Bible and tell them to read it. They give it to them printed on a page. They say, read this. Tell us what you think the poetry means, and then tell us where you think it came from. They don't tell them it came from the Bible. Because this book is so different from every other book in the Bible, so wildly different from every other book in the Bible, most people would read this and go, why is this in the Bible? Because it's so out of character. It's so different from everything that's surrounding it. But that's the idea. In the poetry, you'll often see things that sound like they're visual, and they're really not. Okay, goats going down a mountain, you're 100% right. He's talking about the way that her hair is not straight. Because when a goat goes down a mountain, it doesn't just beeline. It doesn't just start from the top of the mountain and go down. It just jumps off the cliff. That's not how goats go. Goats are sure-footed, but to go down a steep side of a mountain, goats have to pick their way down and find their way down and trace back and forth. And so he's describing her hair is not straight. And that fits with their culture, their race. From where they are, they don't have straight hair. They have curly to wavy hair. And so he's describing her locks as going back and forth and back and forth. And he is transfixed by them. Later on in the book, he calls them curtains. The way a curtain has, a scallop pattern, and they're pulled to one side. Can you kind of picture the hair pulled around the ear and kind of like the different wavy lines in the hair? So he describes her hair as if it was curtains pulled back. And it's like you can kind of see the face with the curtains. You know what I mean? So like there are visual ones, but they're not all visual. Okay? And they're not all directly visual. So for instance, her hair does not look like dusty cloth. That's what I think of when I think of curtain. I think of a dusty cloth that's in the corner of the room, and oh, don't touch that, it's full of dust. But that's not what he's saying when he talks about her hair. So anyways, let's listen to, you guys can get kind of a taste for the super duper flowery language that is in the book of Song of Solomon. See the video actually works.
Switch off. Yeah.
This is a wife.
How beautiful are your feet in sandals, oh prince's daughter.
My beloved is dazzling and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000.
Emblem. It stands with people. Alright, so my beloved stands out among
Stands
people.
out.
Yes. Please help me out here.
His head is like gold, pure gold. His locks are like clusters of dates, and black as a raven.
Clusters of dates and black as a raven. I don't know. The guy has black hair. Black curly hair.
The curves of your hips are like jewels, the work of the hands of an artist.
His eyes are like doves beside streams of water, bathed in milk and reposed in their setting. So they're very white. I'm great at analyzing poems.
Your navel is like a round goblet which never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is like a heap of wheat fenced about the villains. I think it's romantic. Yeah.
His cheeks are like a bed of balsam, banks of sweet-scented herbs. His hips are lilies dripping with liquid myrrh. Liquid myrrh. His lips are lilies dripping with liquid myrrh. It's a prime one.
Your neck is like a tower of ivory. Your eyes like the pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath Rabim. Your nose is like a tower of Lebanon, which faces towards Damascus. Means that I have no idea.
His hands are rods of gold set with beryl. His abdomen is carved ivory inlaid with sapphires.
Your head crowns you like Carmel. I thought it was caramel. That would have been better. And the flowing locks of your head are like purple threads.
The king is captivated by your tresses.
His legs are pillars of alabaster set on pedestals of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars.
How beautiful and delightful, how delightful you are, my love, with all your charms.
His mouth is full of sweetness, and he is wholly desirable. I agree at that point.
This is my beloved.
This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem.
She just won me over. Did you guys write this?
Where do I think it comes from?
Short story.
I'm thinking like some Greek mythology.
Yeah. This sounds like something comes out straight out of Twilight.
Is it from the Bible? I don't know. Like, this is Jerusalem. I don't know.
Is this like biblical stuff?
Alrighty. So you guys can see that, just random person on the street, when given a piece of Song of Solomon read, it took them a second to really figure out, is this from the Bible? What? Like, and their hint was, it said stuff like Jerusalem. And Damascus isn't even associated with the Bible, it's just a normal place on the map, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't even know. Most people don't even understand that Lebanon is that close to Israel. If I asked you to find Lebanon on a map, you'd probably have a really hard time finding it. So when they're reading these words, not all of them are dead giveaways. Some of them, if you really know your map, you'll be like, oh, they're focusing on this one little place on the planet. I'll bet that's the Bible. But not everyone really knows their geography like that. So the point is that the book doesn't actually bring God into it all of the time. It brings God into it in really interesting ways, actually. Because it is a love poem, they bring God into it when they're talking about commitment. But when they're talking about each other, they're not talking about God. And so this is the interesting thing about Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon is not God's opinion on how marriage should go, how dating should go. It's an example of how dating can go. It's an example of how marriage can go. This isn't like the perfect courtship, the perfect wedding, and the perfect marriage outlined for us in poem. This is a courtship, this is a wedding, this is a marriage. But what's so cool about this is it gives you guys a picture of how awesome love can be. And there isn't really any sin in this. There's one thing that could be looked at as a sin, but it actually takes place in a dream. We'll get there as we move through the story of Song of Solomon, because it paints kind of a story picture for their relationship. It starts out in that dating phase, moves through their wedding in the middle, and then it's their marriage in the last half of the book. But during the marriage, there's something that goes wrong, but we'll get there. It's not as wrong as it looks. So anyways, the author, like I said, is Solomon. He's identified right at the beginning of the book. He probably wrote it around 965 BC. We'll see he's already married to several women when this book takes place. And you might be wondering, like, okay, wait a second, epic love poem, and this is his, umpteenth wife. that doesn't really make sense. Keep in mind, most marriages back then, even normal people's first marriage, was arranged. Normal people's first marriage was ordinarily arranged back then. You didn't meet someone and fall in love and then decide to get married. Your dad showed up one day and said, "Hey, I found you a spouse." And you're like, "Okay, cool. I've always wanted one of those." and then I'm not even joking. Sometimes you met them on the wedding day. You want to know something really weird, okay? The veil thing, that got its start because of arranged marriages. That got its start because the husband was not to look at his wife until they were husband and wife.
Like ever. Never saw them before the marriage.
Yeah, suddenly you're married. Now you can go to your tent and you can take off the veil. Now you can.
That's because they get on the side like, oh, you're ugly, I don't want to marry you.
Well,
Bye.
there's two sides to that. Yes, you could probably interpret it that way, but even today in Middle Eastern cultures, it's considered sinful to look on someone if you're a man, it's considered sinful to look on a woman who you are not related to. I'm not joking, just anyone who you are not related to. And so the idea was that until the point where you're married, you're not related to them. They're just, a girlfriend, they're your fiance, they're whatever, but you're not related to them. And so it would be a sin to look upon them. That's still alive in Middle Eastern culture in a lot of places. And that was alive back then. And so the idea was, if you looked upon her before your wedding day, then like, oh man, you were crossing a line, you were crossing a boundary. Now what we'll see here in this story is that was not alive and well in Jerusalem. That was not the policy there. I was just saying that's how, veils got started, that's how that whole thing got started. But it was different here, it was different at this point in time. That is not what's going on in Song of Solomon. We'll find out they were actually kissing, they were trying to find time alone together before they got married. Ooh. Yes. Wow. Hit me.
Why are they using veils?
Oh, good point. Tradition. People don't always know why they do
And
things.
also, that was in where in the Bible where Jacob and
Yes. Jacob marries Rachel, but no, he married who by mistake first? Leah. He marries Leah by
she was,
mistake.
like, on the aisle, but she was trying to marry someone else with him.
Well, he was. He was trying to marry.
Yeah, he was trying to marry
Yeah.
someone else, but then
The dad of the bride switched up.
Yeah.
So like he fell in love with the younger sister. He asked to marry the younger sister. Dad says yes. Wedding day comes, and the girl under the veil is not the younger sister. It's the older sister. Oh yeah, he had to work for 7 years.
Oh yeah.
That was ridiculous. So then after he marries Leah, his dad's like, well, you used up your 7 years on Leah. He's like, yeah. So he makes him promise to work another 7 years for Rachel. But he gets to marry Rachel.
Now he's got 2 wives.
2 wives.
I feel sorry.
Not what he planned.
I feel sorry for the older sister, like. 'Cause,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
he's like, oh, love you, the one.
No,
guy
God
you
felt sorry for the older sister. And so the first few years of their marriage, only the older sister could have kids. Crazy, right? Yeah. All right, so that's a whole other story. Move on from there. We're up past that story. That story is actually about the man whose name gets changed to Israel. He's the one who starts the family, the country family, through those 2 wives, and then later he gets 2 extra wives. He ends up with 4 wives in the end. Those 4 wives are the ones who birth the 12 original sons that start the 12 original tribes of Israel. And now we're dealing with the king of Israel. So it's a little ways past all that. So the purpose of writing all this, basically Solomon is taking the love between a husband and wife and he is lifting it up for you guys. And he's saying the love between a husband and wife is a good thing. He's like, I don't care if there's bad marriages out there. The love between a husband and wife is a good thing. I don't care if there's divorces out there. The love between a husband and wife is a good thing. I don't care how many bad things can happen in this world. The love between a husband and wife is a good thing. He wants you guys to get that. He wants you to understand. He wants you to believe it. Because so often we focus on, we get stuck on the downsides, the bad things that can happen, all the problems that come up. And Solomon wants to remind you guys, he wants to show you in beautiful ways that love between a husband and wife is so amazingly good that it's worth it. It's worth any trouble you have to go through. It's worth any task you have to perform. It's worth any sacrifice you have to make because of how awesome it is, how good it is. I can attest to that now. I'm married. It's hard to teach Song of Solomon when you're single. I never tried it. Probably, good thing that I didn't. But it is really a good thing. This is also important right here. There's a lot of stuff you guys can read that I might not say, but this is super duper important. When you're married, you got to love each other spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And if you leave out one of those, you're going to have problems. If you leave out the spiritual side of marriage, you'll have problems. If you leave out the emotional side of marriage, as so many men are wont to do, you will have problems. If you leave out the physical side of marriage, you'll have problems. You need all three. You've got to have all three. You've got to make sure each of you is spiritually taken care of. You've got to make sure each of you is emotionally taken care of. You've got to make sure each of you is physically taken care of. You've got to have all three. Now, just real quick, think about this. Think about people you know who date. They're not married yet. They're dating. Okay, try and find someone in your head. Picture it. Okay. Now, go down the checklist for their relationship. Are they helping each other out, feeding each other on a physical level? Are they looking after each other's physical needs? Are they looking after each other's emotional needs? Are they looking after each other's spiritual needs? Okay, now real quick, just raise me, how many fingers did they fail on? Did they fail on at least one of those? Did they fail on 2 of those? Did they fail on 3 of those? You guys have 3 fingers up. That's not good. You have 4 fingers up. I don't even know what that means.
It's a train wreck.
So here's the deal. If you're their friend, if they trust you, talk to them. Talk to them. You might not know what to say yet, but by the end of today, you probably will. Okay? Talk to them. They need to know what God says about relationships. They need to know what a right relationship looks like. Just because they're failing now is not your job to say, okay, break up, you're done, you failed. But as a friend, you can go to them and say, hey, you're headed for disaster. I've looked in the Bible, I've seen what a relationship takes, and you guys don't have it all yet, but you can. You can have all these things, okay? And for you guys, in your future relationships, just know that if you end up focusing on one of these 3, or you end up ignoring one of these 3, you're going to have problems in your relationship, okay? So look for that balance. Be, and this is the word that gets tossed around so much when you get older, be intentional. Decide, I want to do this, I want to do this, and I want to do this. I want to do all 3 of those. And then figure out when you're going to take care of those. Figure out how you're going to take care of those. You can go too far. You can make their spiritual well-being so important to you that your spiritual well-being starts to suffer. You can make emotion such an important thing in your life that you have no time left for anything else. You can make physical things so important that you go too far before you get married. You can go too far on these 3 as well. But if you ignore them, it will crush you. It'll crush both of you. All right, so the 2 extremes this book combats is the denial of all pleasure and the pursuit of only pleasure. You'll see if you read the book, if you actually take some time, crack it open and try and understand the poetry, that they talk a ton about how much the other person delights them. That word delight gets used a bunch. Delight, delight, delight. I take delight in you. You delight me. Oh, your appearance, it is delightful. So much delight, okay? But here's the deal. You've got to find the right balance. And it even shows you in the book. Family can help you with that. That even though you're starting a relationship just you and one other person, you can lean on your family to help you have a good relationship. You can ask your family for advice. You can ask your family for boundaries. You can ask your family to step in when your head is just swimming with lovey-dovey thoughts. You can ask your family to help you out. All right, so the marriage that is modeled in Song of Solomon is a model of care, commitment, and delight. And all 3 of those are important as the spiritual, emotional, and physical. Care, that means you're putting them first. Commitment, that means nothing will ever turn you away. Nothing will ever turn you away. And delight, which means it's not boring. It's not stale. It's not some sort of job or chore to love the other person. It's fun. It's fun to put the other person first. It's fun to just say, you know what? I don't care what I want. I want to figure out what they want. I want to make what they want happen. It's fun. All right, so now we move on. Check out a few of these verses. This is Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 7. This is the woman speaking to her friends, the women of Jerusalem, or the daughters, as they're called in some translations. The daughters of Jerusalem, okay? So this is the lead lady talking to all the extras, the backups, the bridesmaids, if you will, okay? She says, "Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and wild deer, not to awaken love until the time is right." Anyone really want to know the whole by the gazelles and wild deer bit? I explained this a few Wednesdays ago. I don't know if any of you guys are here, but classic Hebrewism. It means if you speak Hebrew, you'll get it. If you don't speak Hebrew, you gotta have it explained. You would say by the, and then you would list something that has the attribute that you are thinking about. Okay, so you say by the, and then you list the thing that has the attribute you're thinking about. So what she's thinking about right now, when she's saying this, is, oh my gosh, I don't want to hold back anymore. I just want to go for it. I just want my relationship to go light speed. I want to be done. I want to get to the finish line right now. Can we get married today? Can we get married today? Can we get married today? Now! 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 She's losing her mind with how much she loves this man. And she says, by the deer and the gazelles, you should let love come around when it comes around. You should wait. So she's offering this crazy counterpoint. By the things that leap and don't wait and they just go. Wait and don't just go. You gotta see, like, it's meant to be poetic. It's meant to be like, by all the things that don't know how to do this, you gotta do this. Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to slow down. I don't know how to hold back. I don't know how to not just go find my love and be with him at all times. Because that's what she wants. Well, if you read chapter 1, you find out they're just insanely in love. If you read chapter 2, you find out that their attraction to each other transitions to the desire to be around each other at all times. Has anyone ever seen someone dating who just can't help but be around the person they love at all times? They want to be there. They want to be there. Why aren't they there? I want to go to their house. They should come to my house. I want to go hang out with them. I want to be there. That's chapter 2. And right at the halfway of chapter 2, she says, "Woo! Gotta slow this train down. Going too fast." So check out chapter 3, verse 5. Did you guys notice what happened right there? Check this out, watch. Back to 2, verse 7. Up to 3, verse 5.
Oh, well, the top is like a cool transition.
Yeah, good catch, Andrew. So chapter 3, they're still not married yet. And she's still chomping at the bit. She's still just like, I want to be married. Can I just be married now? Please. I just want to live with him. I want to be with him all the time. I don't want to wait anymore. Please. And then she's like, but, oh my gosh, we can't rush this. If we rush this, we can wreck it. If we rush it, we can wreck it. Yeah.
At one point, when my friend was dating this girl, he would spend his recess following her. Like, it was annoying. Like,
That's
just go do something.
okay. So 2 things to say about that. Junior high is not the time to be dating. There's no logical reason to date in junior high. It's even worse. Okay. But that said, once you are dating and it's like a good age and you're ready to be married and dating is right for you, following your love around is totally natural. I'm not saying that you can't take it too far. You can take it too far. You can follow them way too much. But
My first summer camp last year.
oh man, that was interesting. Yeah, we had at summer camp last year. One of our junior high boys had a huge crush on one of the girls from another church, and just wouldn't stop following her around. It was ridiculous. Took us so long to conquer because, man, he would like nod his head and say yes, like I get it, I shouldn't be doing this, and then we'd catch him like 40 minutes later still
You would
following
like
her
walk
around.
away as you're talking with him. Go, what?
He,
What? Like,
he starts
forget.
following her away from the conversation about not following her, and it's like, dude, you're doing it again. What?
Oh my.
We mentioned it on,
Something.
or at least I mentioned. Did we split up on marriage? No, we were together on marriage. Might have mentioned on dating, but I was talking about how when you're dating, sometimes it's kind of like being high. It's like being on a drug. Because dating, you're just so in love, the love fills your brain, and it's really hard to actually think normal thoughts, to think clearly. The love for the other person clouds your normal thoughts. And so these are her moments of lucidity. She's, before this and after this, she's just like bragging about how awesome her guy is, bragging about how much she loves him, bragging about how amazing their relationship is. And then she has these moments where she goes, but oh my gosh, you shouldn't go too fast. You shouldn't rush things like this. You should take your time in things like this. So she has these moments of clarity amongst all the just kind of freaking out about how in love she is. Another verse, just real quick, another verse. This is Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 4. If you guys saw what happened there. Everyone picking up on the theme yet? So 3 times in the book, she says to all the unmarried girls, to all the single ladies around her, please don't jump into love. Please do not rush into love. Please take your time. 3 times in this book she says that. Chapter 8 is the last chapter. So this is after she's married. The first 2 times was before she's married, when she's freaking out and she wants to be married already. Come on, let's get married! But chapter 8, she says it again, now that she is married. And she says, you know what, love is good. That's what she basically tells us in chapter 8. Love is amazing. Love is great. Love is one of the greatest things on this earth. But you still shouldn't rush it. Crazy, right? But she gets it now. She gets it. All right, move on. Let's see the whole book in summary form. Basically, we see, like I said, it's 4 different parts to this musical. There's the man who later becomes the husband. There's the woman who later becomes the wife. There's all the daughters of Jerusalem, the bridesmaids, so to speak. And then there is the brothers. The brothers don't get a lot of lines, but it's the woman's brothers, okay? So she has a bunch of older brothers that look out for her. They speak up a few times. So, 4 different parts. Chapter 1, verse 1, all the way up to chapter 3, verse 5, is the courtship, the dating, the not married yet, can we please be married now? Do you guys notice the last time she said, take your time, before she got married, was chapter 3, verse 5? And then the next verse is the wedding. I thought that was really interesting. She's like, take your time, guys, don't rush it. Woohoo! We're getting married! Like, that is basically what happens. Like, as soon as verse 5 happens, she looks out over the hills, and here comes her man. That was the custom back then, that the groom would actually travel with the party, the wedding party, to the bride's house. The bride wouldn't know the date of her wedding. That was the custom. The bride had to be ready day after day after day, not knowing exactly when the wedding was going to take place. Anxious! Oh my gosh, how anxious would you be if you didn't know the date of your own wedding? You just had to have the dress ready, have all the makeup set out, have the flowers like in vases of water, and just be like ready to go. Someone has like ribbon ready to go around the flowers. Your dress is like hanging from this 2-story ceiling, so you can just like stand there and it falls on you. Like, you gotta be ready.
Like, oh no,
They're like, basically you'd see them out over the hills, and their time from there to here was your get ready time. That's all
like
you got.
an early warning system.
They got like all the horns blowing. Whoop whoop whoop. You know, there's wedding inbound, wedding inbound. So
Lights start flashing.
So the wedding lasts quite a while. A big chunk of it is actually his vows. Chapter 4 is almost entirely his vows. So the last half of chapter 3 is a description of him coming to her. Chapter 4 is his vows. The last verse of chapter 4, just one verse, is her saying basically, I do. Like, she gets one verse, and then suddenly chapter 5, verse 1 is they're married. It's done, it's over with.
That is easy.
So it's like, it's really fast, and yet he gets a huge chunk, and his vows are actually a really important part of the book. Then we have the bigger part of the book, the largest part, is the maturing of marriage. So we see their marriage over time. Excuse me. And then the very last chapter, there's only one half of it devoted to a look back at the you know, as their marriage has been existent for a while, she looks back and says, how did this all get started? How did we meet? How did we fall in love? How did this start? And so that's what we get at the very end of the book. So I already kind of mentioned some of this. We'll go fast. Chapter 1, they basically just express how attracted to each other they are. They both brag about the looks of the other person. Okay? Something you'll pick up. It's subtle. It's really subtle in this book. But in the book, the woman keeps getting praised for her beauty, but she doesn't accept it. She doesn't accept it. The man tells her, "You're beautiful, you're amazing. Any man would be lucky to have you." And she says, "No, I'm dark." That was actually a bad thing back then. Having a tan meant that you worked outside and that you were poor. And so she was tan because she was a shepherdess. And so she said, "No, I'm dark. You don't want me. You don't like me. I'm not beautiful like all the other women who get to stay indoors." In their culture, because they have naturally darker skin, the lighter your skin was, the more beautiful they considered you. I know, it's totally backwards now. It's like, oh yes, have a tan. That's far more attractive. It's all in your head is what it really is. Okay, the tan means nothing. The tan means you're outside for a while. But this is the interesting thing. She just can't accept that he likes her because of what the tan means. You see, even though he's a king, he likes being outside. He's a king that, in this story we find out, likes to go raise his own sheep. Like, what? The king's out with the sheep? Where they poop on the ground? Really? Yeah, he's an outdoorsy kind of guy. And the fact that she raises sheep and she's an outdoorsy kind of gal, he loves that about her. And so he keeps praising her beauty in all these different ways, and she just goes, "No, I'm not like that, but you." And then she'll praise him. But she'll never accept what he says about her, and we won't see her break down. We won't see her accept his praises until after they're married, after she begins to doubt his love. Not till after all that does she finally realize that he really does see her as beautiful. And so this is something I've seen in our culture. Ladies have a hard time accepting that they are beautiful. And so men, boys, one day you will have a woman of your own. You'll be dating her. You'll eventually get to marry her, and then you'll be married to her. And I cannot stress enough that part of your job is to remind her how beautiful she is. That's part of your job. Okay? Learn that now and don't forget it. That's part of your job. And they may not always take it. They may never take it. They may never accept it. But don't stop reminding them. Don't stop letting them know how amazing they are, that they're one of God's most amazing creations. Okay, move on. Then in chapter 2, they move on from the physical attributes and they start talking more and more about spending time together. However, when it gets a bit too far, when the man seeks her and says, "I want to go alone with you somewhere. I want you and me to just go hiking out into the hills. Just the two of us. Nobody else." Then her brothers step up and say, "Hey, we got a job for you. You want to help us out with something?" They just like distract him, sideswipe her, sideline, derail.
Lake cake.
Whoosh, sweet cake. They say, "Hey, vineyards. They got foxes in those vineyards. You should help us get all the foxes out of the vineyards because the foxes I don't really actually know what foxes do to vineyards, but apparently they mess up the vineyards. I don't really get it. Do they eat the grapes? Foxes eat grapes? I thought maybe foxes like dug burrows under the roots of the grapes and it like starves the plants of water.
They probably just rip up the grape plants.
They're just like, stupid orchards, I don't like you. No, so they say, brothers, "You know what, king, you should help us go chase foxes. That'll be fun, right? Let's go chase some foxes." And then the lady is left alone. She's at home and she laments to her friends like, "Man, I wish we really could have gone off alone. That would have been fun." But then the next chapter comes up, and beginning of chapter 3, she has a dream. She dreams that she's separated from her love, but in the dream, she ends up finding him. She has to like ask people for help, try and figure out where he is, but in the dream she finds him, and they get to have some alone time. That's part of her dream. Whoa. Then we move on to part 2, the wedding. So, rest of chapter 3 tells of the man showing up to marry her, riding on the fanciest thing ever. He made a palanquin made out of fancy wood. I'll explain in a second. Fancy wood, silver, and gold. You guys have ever seen like a cartoon or something? How the king gets carried on the chair that's on like a platform that's got like poles coming across it, so people have to carry the king? Okay, so he makes his palanquin out of like cedar wood, which smells awesome, and then giant things of silver and gold, just like spikes and whatnot, all coming off it. So the other translation of this is couch. So it's like a 2-seater palanquin, but he shows up alone to her house. It's a love seat. It's a limo.
He shows up alone, so he like scoot it.
No, not entirely alone. He brings 60 men of war, fully decked out in all of their armor with
Oh,
their
did he
swords on
fight
their
her?
hips, so he can have a fight with her. No, just to show off. He's showing off on his wedding day. Look how fancy I am. I know, you don't need 60 guys to carry a palanquin. Now, granted, it's made out of silver and gold. It's probably heavier than like a normal palanquin, but still, you don't need 60.
I bet it was pretty easy to convince those guys.
Can you imagine how long the poles would have to be for 60 guys to actually carry that thing? Well, some of them were carrying it, some of them were too much.
I bet a lot of them really like just getting dressed up fancily and just walking around in suits of armor.
I mean, well, you get to do it at a king's wedding. You don't get to do that every. Well, actually, with Solomon, you might.
What's going
Might
on?
get to do that every day. Oh, so he shows up on like the fanciest thing ever, and then in chapter 4, like I said, all but one verse is his wedding vows. So he goes on and on and on and on about how he's gonna love her, how amazing she is. That's actually the focus of his wedding vows, is how he doesn't really deserve her because of how amazing she is. Now she doesn't believe him still, but that doesn't matter because she loves him. She still doesn't understand how he could love her, but she loves him. And so she, in the final verse of chapter 4, says, I'm all yours. Her vow is so short and so sweet. I'm all yours, take me. That's her I do. Yeah.
So you know, like how you can't
Well, like I said, that wasn't true in this story. That was just true in the surrounding area at various times of history.
So, well, what if you like
Well, generally they
Beheading.
were covered. They were completely
Oh, okay.
covered, so like you would see their eyeballs. That was like it. They didn't go out a lot, and usually when you went out, in some of those cultures, you weren't allowed to go out without your dad or your husband. If you were unmarried, it was your dad. If you were married, it was your husband. Sometimes they'd make exceptions. You go out with your brothers or something like that. So, and there is actually an interesting thing in this book. I didn't put it in my notes, but at one point, she laments that the cultural rules are so strict. Because one of the cultural rules they did have at this period of time was you couldn't show affection to anyone except your sibling.
Plus, you'd lose an eye. Which is why people get eye patch.
What?
But yeah, you lose your eye as punishment. So they did
For
eye
showing
patch.
affection?
Oh, of course. And then they said, "Why didn't you use this eye? It's got an eye patch over it." And they believed them. And they just switched the eye patch over.
Andrew, you are too fast at making stuff up that doesn't make any sense. Way too fast. All right. Anyways, the point was in the book Song of Solomon, she actually laments that her husband is not able to be treated like her brother, because in their culture, it was okay to run and give your brother a hug out in public. It was okay to actually kiss your brother on the cheek out in public. But this is so weird. It wasn't okay to hug your husband out in public. It wasn't okay to kiss your husband out in public.
Yeah.
So she said, man, I wish the culture was a little bit looser on this and I could just hug you and kiss you out in public. I wish it was like you were my brother. And so many people read that verse and they're like, she wishes her husband was her brother? Yeah! But that's not the point. The point was, I wish I could hug you. I wish I could kiss you out in public. That's what she's saying. She's not saying, I wish my husband was my brother. That's gross and that's weird.
Yeah.
what if you like stand next to them?
Oh, yeah, you could stand next to him, but you couldn't show affection. It was affection. They were taboo.
We should bring back those rules.
Just stand next to Emily coldly. I love you. That'd be really weird. I don't think I could do that for even more than a day. Yeah.
Nowadays, I kind of believe we bring back. Nowadays, I wish we could bring back some of those rules.
Well, truthfully, some boyfriends and girlfriends take it way too far.
I like the hand chopping rules.
Hand chopping rules? You hold hands, we chop them off.
Yeah.
And as a courtesy, we'll let you hold hands while we chop them off.
High fives rules.
Oh my gosh. Okay, anyways, moving on to chapter 5. The first verse is the only part that's part of the wedding. Basically, we find out that they've consummated their marriage, and then the week-long wedding feast commences. That's a tradition in their culture. Once the two are married, once the two have consummated their marriage, then you have a week of feasting. A week. And so he says to all of his friends there in that verse, you know, let the feast begin, kind of a thing. You know, eat, drink, and be merry.
It's a lot of time without eating.
What?
Well, feasting.
Yeah, that's fasting you're thinking of.
Yeah,
Feasting
that's
is the
bad.
opposite of fasting.
Ridiculous. Fasting is when you go fast.
Oh my god.
Gotta go fasting. Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah. All right, so now we move on past the wedding to them just being married. And this is the longest section, so you can see the words are a lot smaller. So by the second verse of chapter 5, we see yet another dream. This is interesting. Her dream is what starts out the whole section about their marriage. And this is odd because the dream is a bit of a nightmare. It's not a good dream. You remember the first dream she had in the book, she lost her husband, didn't know where to find him, but eventually found him. In this dream, it's a bit different. How she gets to the I've lost my husband, so to speak. So this time, her husband comes home late. She's already in bed. She's already washed up for the night and undressed and got in bed. And she basically says when he knocks at the locked door, no, I'm ready for bed. I'm not getting up again. Which seems harsh. And that's actually the point. It was harsh to turn away your husband like that. Now, honestly, it's a bit, hard for a wife to stay at home while her husband works late. I do that to Emily far too many times. But to lock the door and say you can't come in, which Emily has actually done by accident several times. We have a glass sliding door we use primarily. It's the main door of our house, and there is no key lock. It can only be locked and unlocked from inside the house. There is no key. And she will sometimes accidentally lock the glass sliding door, and I'll come home and just whimper and tap. Because I can't get in. There's like no way.
You can break the
I could break the glass, Andrew. You're right. You're right. I should just do that.
There's not.
That's so
No
logical.
way.
Why didn't I think of that?
Oh, like, well,
No, I could. You're right. I could actually go all the way around to the front of the house and use my key on the front door. But then you have to do that. You do that garage door trick where you like hit the garage door button and run and then like jump the laser fence.
Yeah.
It's just annoying.
Or you just hop the fence or climb the roof.
Oh, I hate hopping our fence. It has nails sticking out of it because we garden with like beam strings going out.
Oh, that's a hardcore parkour.
Oh yeah. That's like taking your leg off parkour. All right, so she feels really, really guilty about this, and she goes to open the door, and he's not there any longer. And remember, this is all a dream. This isn't real, and so the laws of human relationships, the laws of what the king would actually do in real life, they don't apply here. Okay, it's a dream. So in the dream, she goes and starts searching for him all over the place because he wasn't outside the door when she went outside the door. He wasn't outside the house when she went outside the house. He wasn't out in the streets when she went out into the streets. She goes looking for him all over the city and cannot find him. She asks for help this time and she gets rejected. People will not give her help. In fact, when she finds her friends, those daughters of Jerusalem, they kind of mock her and say, yeah, well, your guy's not so special. Why don't you just find a new one anyways?
They say about the king.
Well, but this is the point. Dreams can sometimes lead you down a road that not only doesn't make sense, but hurts. Dreams can lead you down a road that hurts. You can go places in a dream that don't make sense. People in your dream will react in ways that don't make sense, and it hurts. If her husband in real life walked away from that door and refused to talk to her because she wouldn't unlock it, that would be mean. If in real life she refused to let her husband into her bedroom, that would be mean. But this was happening in a dream. And so really what's happening here is it's showing her insecurities in this dream. It's not showing in reality she would lock her husband out of her bedroom. It's not showing in reality her husband would leave her because she did so. It's showing that in reality, she's still insecure. She's still not sure about things. And this is the truth. In a marriage, just because you're married doesn't mean you're always sure. Just because you're in a marriage doesn't mean you always know, yes, we're going to make it. I know he loves me. I know she loves me. Just because you're married doesn't mean suddenly the relationship is easy and assumable. You can't just assume everything's going to work. You have to make it work. It only works because you make it work. And so she has all these doubts. Now, realizing that he must be caring for his flock, she goes and looks for him in his own garden. Now, this is where the story is fuzzy. And it's really hard to tell. The Hebrew doesn't help us out here. We don't know if at chapter 5 she wakes from the dream and goes and finds him, or if in the dream she goes and finds him. Do you see how there's a difference? We don't know. And from this point forward in chapter 5, people act as they should. He doesn't act unkind to her. She doesn't act unkind to him. There's nothing surreal in chapter 5. There's nothing fake in chapter 5. But we don't know. This could be a dream. It could be real. We don't know. You don't know if you're awake, right?
I wake up and I think I'm awake, and it's actually
Especially when you got like dreamception.
And then like I asked my
You
mom,
wake up from your dream inside of another dream.
and then I asked my mom about something that I had in a dream. I was like, so real. I was like, hey, why did you do this today? Or I thought we were gonna do this. And like, what are you talking about? I'm like, but you told me yesterday.
Simple test if you're in a dream or not. Go and slap someone and
No,
see what
yourself.
happens. Because in a dream, there won't be any repercussions. It's
No,
a perfect
that's
test.
not really good.
It's the perfect test.
But what if you're actually awake and like the only person?
Oh yeah, you thought of it. Yeah, don't slap people. All right, so
Well, I don't know. I think I might be dreaming. Let's just.
let's check it. All right, so she goes and she finds her man. He's feeding his flock in the garden. The man reassures her, and this is so sweet, so amazing. I love this scene. Okay, he goes, well, she comes to him. He sees that she is distraught. He sees that she is, upset. And what does he do? He starts affirming her. He starts affirming his love for her, just letting her know, I have not stopped loving you. Regardless of this dreamed up scenario where you lock me out of the bedroom, I love you. And then he goes a step further. He starts quoting from his wedding vows. Just from memory, starts quoting his wedding vows to her. Now, whether this is in a dream or not, it's still beautiful because think of what it means in each situation. In the real life situation, this is a husband caring for his distraught wife. Even though nothing bad has actually happened, her emotions have been damaged by the dream. And so he affirms her and then recites to her his promise to love her that he gave her on their wedding day. Okay, now that's beautiful in and of itself. Now imagine they're in the dream. She's in her dream. She has done something wrong and now is panicking that, oh no, maybe my husband doesn't love me. When she goes to him, her dream husband still is quoting those wedding vows and reminding her in her dream. So what does that really tell you? That means that her own self, because that's who's building the dream here, her own self is being reminded, he does love me because look at what he promised. That's what I found so cool, that if it is in the dream, that means she memorized his wedding vows.
She memorized her, and she had a little piece, but he had like a.
He had a big chunk.
They probably put him in a picture frame and hung up from the doorway.
So I think it's beautiful either way. Either he remembered his wedding vows from the wedding day and recited them to calm her, or she remembered his wedding vows from the wedding day and she was remembering them, recalling them to calm herself. It was soothing to think of what her husband had promised. Okay, so move on. Now she is still insecure, but a bit calmer. We get to chapter 7, and then the man begins to describe his love for her using new words and no longer quoting. And he goes so far this time to express his love that finally the woman receives his affection and accepts his praise. And what I mean by this is, when he calls her beautiful, she's willing to believe it finally. At this point, when her marriage seemed rocky and it was invented, it's part of a dream, but it seemed like it was in question, when he finally consoles her at this time and at this moment tells her, reminds her of how beautiful he sees her to be, then she's willing to accept that compliment. She's willing to believe, you really do see me as beautiful. You really do. This is the first time. Think about this. They've been married now. It's the first time since they've been dating that she's been willing to say, okay, maybe I am actually beautiful. She actually believed it. And this is, I'm sad to say, so true of so many women today. They don't actually believe that they themselves are beautiful. So they don't actually believe that a man who they think can only love things that are beautiful could actually love them. This is where a lot of women find themselves. And so the husband has been trying again and again and again and again to convince her, you are beautiful. You are. She finally believes it. And her response, I think, is equally beautiful. She says, I want some more alone time with you. I don't want to just go looking for you in the night and find you feeding your flock. I want to just spend time with you. And I think it's so cool what she does. She meets him halfway. She says, let's take the flock somewhere far away, just the two of us. So she says, I know you love your flock and you can't leave your flock. I know you need to keep taking care of them. I know if you left them alone, they would hurt themselves. And so you feel like you can't leave them alone. But I need you alone. Me and you need to spend time. Just us time. And so she says, let's take the flock and go.
Me, you, and 83 sheep.
Right? So I think that's cool though that the woman was willing to say, this is something we both need, but I'm willing to do it in a way that works for you. I'm willing to do it in a way that you're going to be able to just say yes to, and you're not going to have any reservations. You like to spend time with the flock, so I'm going to spend time with you while you spend time with the flock. I'm going to be with you. I think that's really cool. Move on, we get to the last chapter. The first half of it, anyways, is still attached to their marriage. And so it's just going to describe that they're strong with love for each other. Oh, yeah. So this is describing, sorry, I was reading my own notes going, what did I write? This is describing that in marriage, love grows, and that after the whole doubt and reminding of the fact that the marriage ain't going anywhere, suddenly it became stronger. So through the pitfall, it grew in strength. Does that kind of make sense? Through her doubts and his reassurances, the marriage actually became better. The love between them became stronger. And so then it ends with this beautiful description of how amazing love is in a marriage. And this is it. This is the description. I showed the same verse on Wednesday. If you guys weren't here, Wednesday was all about marriage. And this is one of the best verses about marital love in the whole Bible. I love, it was actually 2 verses, but I love these verses. It says, this is, again, the woman speaking to the man. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, like a tattoo. Not a seal. We're talking like the old-fashioned gloppa wax, put a stamp in it seal. Okay, you put something on there to show that it belongs to you. For love is as strong as death. It's jealousy. Love's jealousy, love's like, longing desire to keep something, is as enduring, as lasting as the grave. People don't generally get unburied, as a general rule.
Another juxtaposition, because it's usually death that terminates the marriage.
Yes. But the idea is that you can keep on loving someone after they die. So love is stronger than death. Likewise, it's God's love of us that saves us from eternal death. So again, love is stronger than death. It's kind of beautiful how that works out. Love flashes like fire, the brightest kind of flame. Many waters cannot quench love, nor can rivers drown it. Now, I mentioned this on Wednesday. If you were here, you remember. But try and picture a flame, okay? A flame so white hot, it's hard to look at. Okay, now picture this flame being so big that if you dumped a waterfall, a literal waterfall on the flame, that instead of going out, you just turn it all to steam. But can you picture that kind of flame? That big, that powerful, that strong? Man, if you walked up next to it, you would just disintegrate, right? We're talking like the heat of the sun or something. Like, but the point is, it'd be so hot, the rain would just go, pss, 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 and the flame would be fine. This is what they're saying is the love in marriage. That many things will come against it, many things will try and destroy it, many things will try and quench it and put it out, or make it go smaller, become a smaller flame. But if kept properly, if treated with respect, if nurtured, if loved well, the love in a marriage will only grow, and it will consume other things. It will use other things in order to grow, even things that come against it to try and destroy it. And the final thing, and this is kind of leads into the last section, if a man tried to buy love with all of his wealth, his offer would be utterly scorned. So remember who we're talking about here. We're talking about Solomon, quite possibly the richest man who ever lived on the face of the earth, being told by the woman, love is amazing, love is great, but if you tried to buy it, you'd get mocked. I don't care how much money you used. This goes into the final section of the book. Final of the section of the book actually goes backwards in time and reviews how did this all get started. It actually opens with a part that was in the part previously. It kind of does a tick-tock where it checkerboards past it. But previously, someone sees the husband and wife coming back from their trip. Remember how I said they were going to go off alone with the sheep? Some relative who hasn't even seen them since they got married, they're visiting in town, and they see the two of them coming back from their trip, and they can see just even from a great distance how much they love each other. Even from a great distance, they can see the way that they hold hands or hang on each other, I believe the actual wording is leans. They're walking and she is leaning on him while they're walking. They can see from that. They can see from the way they're talking and laughing. They can see from that, even from a great distance, that these two people really truly love each other. And so this relative who's been, visiting recently and didn't even know they got married says, "Who is that? Who did she get married to?" Man, won't that be a surprise when
That's
Grandma
a
comes to
terrible
visit
thing.
and they're
Gotta
like,
say.
"Oh yeah, by the way, our daughter got married to the king." We're like, who did she get married to? So they don't even know. This is what starts up the whole reminiscing of how this all got started. The brothers tell their part of the story. The brothers say, when she was young, we said we would, basically tell any guy to take a hike. When she was young, we would just tell every guy to get lost. You can't have her. That's what happened when she was young. And then she speaks up and she says, yeah, but when I got older, I was smart. I was tough. I wasn't going to let any man have me. I was going to find the right man, and no other man was going to have me before that. And she says, I was so tough. When I saw Solomon out in the fields, I wasn't smitten at first. I wasn't head over heels for him.
Kicked rocks at him.
No, she mocked him. She said, he's so rich and pompous, I would never have him.
And she married him.
She ended up marrying the guy she was mocking. She ended up marrying the guy she was mocking. She said, he's so rich, he's so pompous, I would never have him. Then he finds her one day, and he says, my friends have heard you singing, and they said your voice is beyond compare. Could I hear? And then she was immediately in love, because he was interested in her, and he did not come flaunting his wealth. He did not come trying to buy her affection with presents. He said, I just want to hear you sing. Her response to this, the way she says, I'm in love with you, is not by saying, I'm in love with you. The way she says, this is how our relationship started, is not by saying, this is how our relationship started. The way she says this, the closing of the book, the last little paragraph, is a quote from earlier on in the book when they were deeply, madly in love, but not yet married. The quote is, get lost before I maul you. Like, go off like a wild animal, just go running far away because I'm so in love with you right now. I need you to leave. That is what she says at the close of the book. That just from him being interested in my singing voice and not interested in me in any other way, not trying to buy my affection, just showing me that side of him, where he was like, I heard you can sing. Can I hear it? That side of him being shown to me was all it took, and I was head over heels. I was madly in love.
I love you so much it could kill you.
I could, when I say maul, I don't mean kill. But that is the end of the book. Now, the foreshadowing in this is actually quite intense. You might not get it from the way I told it. I tried to tell it as much in their version of the story as I possibly could. But many Bible scholars who've read through the Song of Solomon don't see this book as being something that's entirely about a love story. Not entirely. That's primarily what it is. It's the main story is they're in love and they get married, okay? But they see another story perfectly laid out in time with that story. The whole working up to marriage, and then the wedding day, and then the marriage thereafter, okay? They see in that structure something of Jesus. Check this out, okay? So Song of Solomon is a representation of Christ and his church. Christ is Solomon, the king, the man. And the church is represented by the Shulamite. But that's actually what she gets called throughout the story because that's where she's from. She's from the town of Shulam. So she's the Shulamite. But the woman is seen as us, the church. And the idea is that we see ourselves as not worthy. We see ourselves as not good enough. We see the sin in our lives when we go to Jesus. And Jesus says, but I love you. And we're like, no, but I'm not worthy. And Jesus is like, but I love you. And we're like, no, but I'm not worthy. And Jesus goes so far as to die for us, to give his life for us. That's the marriage. It's the wedding. Oh, man, it's insane. And so he gives his life for us, and he says, look, this is how much I love you. My life is yours. And we still sometimes will say, even after we are now part of his family, even after we become Christians, technically wedded, okay, even after that, we still sometimes say, oh, I'm not worthy. And Jesus has to remind us, but I married you. What is the translation? But I already died for you. That was the proof that it doesn't matter that you're worthy enough. That's the proof that your opinions of you don't matter. my opinion of you matters. I died for you. And so that's actually what happens in the story. The husband says, you know what? Your opinion of you may be that you're ugly. Your opinion of you may be that you're not worthy of me because I'm the king or whatever. But here's the deal. I married you. That's the proof that I find you worthy. You need to accept the fact that I accept you. And this is what Jesus says to us. He says, you may not be worthy in reality, but that doesn't actually matter because I accept you. That is what matters. So, there's more foreshadowing here. There's a really cool verse in chapter 4, and it describes the experience of us before we're believers, when Jesus just seeks after us. And it's really cool the way he gives us gifts and he blesses us even though we really don't deserve it. So here it is, chapter 2, verse 4. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Now, in a literal sense, I mean, very, very literal, we're talking about King Solomon taking an average, ordinary shepherd girl into the palace with all the royal people and putting her at the table and explaining to everyone publicly, I love this woman. Okay, that's the literal sense. But the spiritual sense is this. Jesus Christ has in front of every angel, every person on this planet, gone and taken you and said, this person I love. And I am welcoming them into my family, and I forgive them for whatever they've done because I love them. And he says, I'm going to publicly proclaim this by dying for them. I'm going to make sure everybody knows I love you. And so this is kind of the idea that Jesus takes us, he finds us and moves us. He doesn't just call up from a distance and say, I hope you find me because I love you from a distance. He seeks us and finds us. That's really, really cool. There's a bit more to the foreshadowing. Later on in the same chapter, he says, my beloved is mine, and she says, my beloved is mine, and I am his. He feeds his flock among the lilies. He feeds his flock among the lilies. Here's the deal. Lilies are pretty flowers that you don't normally feed to animals. You'd probably get kicked out of the garden if you tried to feed all the lilies to your sheep. But this is the king. And so this is the point. She's saying about the king. He loves his sheep so much that nothing's too good for them. If they want to eat the lilies, eat the lilies.
They'll grow back anyways.
Huh? They'll grow back anyways. If you want to eat this plant, eat that plant. Go ahead. You're my sheep. I love you. Eat whatever. Well, yeah, obviously. Eat whatever you feel like. I don't care if it's expensive.
He loves it. She said it's free.
That's not in the Bible. That's made up. That's the world's way of saying you should break up with people who want to break up with you. Like that has nothing to do with the Bible.
No, I think the sheep should be allowed to live in the town. They should get their own house and have to pay taxes.
You go ahead and try and be a shepherd. Andrew, didn't you raise animals? Didn't you do animal husbandry?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you just like let your sheep in the house one day and your mom came home and they're just like in the kitchen making a sandwich?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. All right. Anyways, the point is that verse, the verse before it, it's supposed to be a picture not only of the security that we have in Christ, but of the fact that he knows us and he's willing to sacrifice for us. He's willing to take his garden of flowers and say, here you go. The sheep aren't going to do anything meaningful with those flowers. They're not going to like cut them and make little bouquets. They're not going to make an arrangement. They're not going to make like a wreath or like a cool flower necklace. They're just going to eat them. And this is kind of the point. God gives us blessings, and sometimes we don't even know what the blessings are for. I mean, flowers, not for eating. Flowers, you make a cool little headdress or something out of it. But like, he just gives it to us anyways. He doesn't care if our blessings that he gives us are going to be halfway used properly. He still gives them. He still gives them. And then we eat them. But this is the really cool part. Song of Solomon 4:7, he actually says that any blemish you have is gone. He says this to his bride. Remember, this is during his vows. And he says, you I see as wholly pure. I see no blemish in you. It was in his vows that I see nothing wrong with you.
Was this his first wife?
No. And this is hard for us to understand in the modern era, but most, like I said, marriages back then were arranged. And Solomon one of the biggest things his kingdom accomplished, his reign accomplished, was making peace with surrounding countries. And the primary means, one of the only ways he found to do that was marrying the daughter of a neighboring king. And so he already, at this point, they actually number it. I forget the number, but they have the number in Song of Solomon, how many queens he has, how many concubines he has, when this happens. And it's more than 10. I think it's like 60 and 30. That sounds right. He had like 90 women already at his palace when all this takes place. But this is kind of the point. This is likely the first time he ever loved a woman. Really, what that says to me is sad, is it's not sad for this woman, although it seems like it would be sad for her. To me, that is sad for those 90 women. I mean, it might seem sad for the one who, like, you know, she's number 91. That seems really sad. But he actually loved her. There's no evidence at all that he loved the first lady. That's the sad part. Yeah. But he prevented so many wars by it. And so I can't say it's right, but there was definitely benefit. Definitely benefit. Solomon never had to go to war. Like, his dad never stopped going to war because his country was always being sought after by a neighboring country. The king before his dad never stopped going to war. They're at war the entire time through Saul's reign and David's reign. There's never peace.
Wonder though what God would have done to help him if he didn't have someone alive.
How he would have accomplished the peace without it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably could have bought him off.
Oh, so those guys temples.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so anyways, yeah, so Jesus sees no spot in you guys. That's the point. Jesus sees no spot in you guys, which is such a crazy idea considering how much sin we have in our lives. But that is how Jesus is. Once he's forgiven us, he treats us as if we're forgiven. He does not mess around with forgiveness. He does not say, you know, oh yeah, you're kind of forgiven. No, he treats us like we are clean. Such an awesome, awesome thing. So, here's the end of it. Definitely don't forget the part about Jesus, but most of this book is just about marriage. So here's the part you need to know for your future marriages, okay? Do not forget this. And if you have the chance to counsel someone or give someone advice who's married, do it super polite because you're crazy young for doing that. But if it comes from the Bible, I don't think they can deny it. I don't think they can say, no, that's bad advice. Here's the advice. Okay, ready for this? 4 things. Give your spouse the attention they need. Take the time to truly know your spouse. Okay? If you're not best friends with your spouse, become best friends with your spouse. Get to know them. Get to know them. Encouragement and praise are appropriate in a marriage. Criticism is not. Encouragement and praise are vital in a marriage. Criticism is not. Okay? Avoid criticism. Seek after encouragement and praise. Try and encourage your spouse. Try and praise your spouse. That is most of what the book is praising each other. That's most of the book. Enjoy each other. This is so big. If anyone who's married gets bored in their marriage, if anyone who's married gets like really depressed about marriage, oh, my marriage isn't that great. Problems, red flags, awful, horrible things, okay? You gotta find some way to enjoy each other. Like, I'm not kidding. Take a week off of work. You've got to find a way to enjoy each other. You can't not. It will end you. It will crush you. So plan some getaways. Be creative. Spend real time thinking about what you can do to show the other person love. What you can do to just spend time with the other person. Uninterrupted time. And then delight in God's gift of married love. Don't think that there's any reason why God would say, oh, that's gross. Don't think that. I know sometimes we see people who are kissing and it's like, oh, ew, ew. But here's the deal. God invented that. So try and realize God invented romance and he's not unhappy with it. He's not unhappy with it. He likes it when married couples are romantic. He likes it when married couples are all smoochy and they just can't get enough of each other. He loves that. He invented that relationship to build those two people up, to make them stronger people. So when married couples spend time loving each other, he likes it. He puts his stamp of approval on that. He says, good job. That's why you're in the relationship. All right. Last and certainly not least, do whatever it takes to reassure your commitment to your spouse. If your spouse has any doubts, reassure them. If you're just not even sure if your spouse has doubts, reassure them. Do not let your spouse start to doubt whether or not you're committed to them. Do not let your spouse doubt whether or not you love them. Don't give them room. Don't give them any reason to doubt your love for them. Reassure them at all times. Do whatever it takes. I mean, if you have to renew your vows, if you have to go get counseling, whatever it takes, just don't do this. Don't consider divorce as a solution. This is the thing you've got to remember here, okay? Marriage is meant to last. Divorce does what? It ends the marriage. So is divorce a solution? No, it's not a solution, okay? It's the self-destruct button. You're on the submarine that's supposed to be doing a job, and instead of fixing the submarine, you said, well, we don't want it to fall into enemy hands. Bonk.
I would say it's like opening the
I'm glad I fixed that submarine.
You would have.
That's not how it works. When you hit the self-destruct button, you didn't fix anything. Okay, so this is the deal. Divorce is not a solution. It's not a solution. That is a cold, hard fact. It's not an opinion. There's a lot of opinions about divorce, but this is a fact. Divorce is not a solution. It's not a solution. All right, so God intends for you both to live in a deeply peaceful and secure love. Peaceful and secure. So work towards that. Try for that. Treat that as your goal. If your marriage isn't peaceful, work on that. If your marriage isn't secure, if you guys are second guessing each other and doubting each other, work on that. It needs to be peaceful and secure. It needs to be. Fighting should not have to happen all the time. Now, if two people disagree, they need to figure out what they're going to do. Sometimes that uses fighting. Fighting will get you to figure out